Thanks for joining us here on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. And happy Friday. You made it to the edge of the weekend. And I like to start the weekend off with some self-improvement. And that's why we begin today's show with our weekly Clark Stinks segment. Also today, an easy, relatively low-tech solution to the ongoing porch pirate problem. But right now, we got to talk about the problem with me where you think I messed up.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
All right, I've got to give a Clark Stinks to Clark's response to the Clark Stinks regarding the United and doctor incident. First, I think we all agree that United was wrong for its atrocious policies. Beyond that, I watched the video for myself as Clark advised. Maybe Clark should review it as he continues to misrepresent the incident. No one from United touched the doctor. They called the Chicago aviation officers who ordered the doctor to exit the plane. He then refused to obey a lawful police order and resisted the officers. To be fair, those officers were later disciplined for escalating this situation. That's a far cry from Clark's false representation that United, quote-unquote, beat up the doctor. Why do those officers get a pass in Clark's version of the story? Your listeners and viewers deserve the true story, Mike.
Mike, thank you. Yeah, so should I have shorthanded that? You're right, I shouldn't have. The reality, United completely changed its policies after Dr. Darrell was beaten up. I think he had a concussion and broken teeth, and it was just terrible. So once a passenger is seated on an aircraft, and pretty much every airline learned from this, they don't then pull you off the plane unless you're an airline employee or someone on a buddy pass.
Or you're like unruly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. If you're a discipline problem yourself, yeah. That was handled completely wrong by United. They apologized. They changed all their policies. And it's true. There were poorly trained airport employees, airport security employees who dragged Dr. Darrell off and injured him. How did he resist? He just sat in the seat. He said, I'm not giving up my seat. And then they grabbed him out of the seat and harmed him. But it was really all United's fault. Should the police have been better trained? I don't know if they were public. I don't know what exact official capacity they were, like public safety officer. I forget what it was. But should they have been better trained? Yes. Should they have ever been called upon by United to do this to Dr. Darrell? No.
Okay, let's move on. Clark, you smell...
We're relitigating something from what, 7 years ago, 8 years ago?
Clark, you smell worse than a durian fruit that's been left out in the sun for days. People often reference the durian fruit. You said that you would only do the Clark Stink segments every other week when you went from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, but now you do them weekly. What happened, Chris?
Chris, there were a lot of complaints from people that we weren't doing Clark Stinks every week. And I don't know, do we do it 2 out of every 3 weeks? I mean, what do you think is going to be the right?
I don't know. We'll see. I'm getting less submissions, so it could be that we have to skip a week at some point. We'll just see how it goes.
Okay. But the reason Clark Stinks came back weekly is because there were a lot of people unhappy, Chris, that we were only going to do it every other week, and it'll find its natural level.
Clark, you stink worse than my apartment after my sick cat has painful bowel movements all over my carpet.
Oh, my goodness.
Ew.
Oh.
When talking about Social Security, you agreed with the listener about how it would be a good idea for Social Security to be a forced investment, but you failed to take into account the history of Social Security. Since the beginning in the early 40s, it has never been investing. It has always been taking from those of working age and giving it to retired people. It would be great to find a system where it can be invested, but there are issues. How do you cleanly stop current Social Security without hosing, basically, people working now who would have paid in but not get a benefit? Jordan,
thank you. All right, so I don't remember the exact scenario when we were talking about it on the podcast and YouTube show, but what I've been in favor of, I think I talked about former President George W. Bush when he came up with a proposal. The idea is that people would continue to save in to pay into traditional Social Security, which you're completely right now is a reverse Ponzi scheme. The people working are paying for people in retirement. There is not a pile of money sitting there to pay the Social Security checks. Okay, that's all true. What I like is the idea of having not a mandatory, but an add-on additional Social Security you can do that goes into an investment account. It'll automatically be pulled out of payroll, and you could do it as a negative option like so many employers now do with 401ks, where you're automatically putting money into the additional investment thing unless you opt out. The whole idea is we need to get people into a position where they're benefiting from the long-term advantage of being an owner of enterprises, small one as it would be, and also that we get people into a mode of saving more money towards their future so they're not impoverished in retirement. So it would have to stack on top of the existing Social Security system that would continue to be funded as it is because we don't have the money to do a sharp transition right now, or I don't even know how you would do that sharp transition. That would require mathematics and economics beyond my skill level.
This is not too stinky, but definitely a scent of brain fart in the air. For gold, you continuously fail to mention that the metal has some industrial uses. The most common industrial use is gold plating of electrical connectors to avoid corrosion and oxidation. There are commercial and military standards about gold plating indicating that it is common and important. Please at least acknowledge this small but very important industrial use. Jay, a retired electrical engineer.
Jay, thank you very much. And of courses I would have flunked out of right away in school, any engineering class. Did you ever take engineering?
Oh, no.
Wow, that's so far over my head.
All right. Love getting your emails and the info you share, but you really have to get over the no check bags mantra. It's not always feasible, Chris.
Chris, thank you. How much did my wife pay you to do that post?
All right, I got a slight whiff from Christa when she said she doesn't buy anything from eBay unless the seller sells thousands of items. I'm a beleaguered baby boomer who is trying to shed some of the many inherited items that my adult children do not want. I think some of it has value, but finding a buyer is daunting. I would like to sell it if possible. eBay seems safer than Craigslist, but Christa thinks there's too much hanky-panky on eBay. If you have a suggestion, please let me know. P.S. I use FreeCycle for the things I don't think have much value or donate to Goodwill. I just hate to send perfectly good things to the landfill. Leslie.
Leslie, if you ask me, the best place to do so is next door, or on Facebook's local marketplace, right? What do you call those?
Facebook Marketplace, yeah.
Okay.
But you do it's a local listing. I agree. I would say those two places.
Those two, I'd say, would come before posting things for sale on eBay.
Yeah.
You're not going to have as wide a marketplace, but it will be local in your immediate area.
And only meet people in a public place. Like you can meet someone to transact at a police station, just somewhere that's very public.
Yeah, I love exchanges at police stations, particularly anybody who does Craigslist. You don't want to do any transaction anywhere but right in front of a police station. I remember we talked about when there was a lot of crime involving Craigslist where people would ambush you, that there were police departments around the country that were publicly notifying through local media, hey, come inside the precinct to do your transaction. Any crook isn't going inside the precinct to rob somebody.
Isn't it wonderful that you pointed out how fast food restaurants have been able to adapt and become more efficient? Lovely! You should be so proud of yourself for finding yet another way to encourage people to buy fast food, which is filled with sugar, oil, cholesterol, and saturated fat, which directly causes heart disease, diabetes, stroke, autoimmune disease, and cancer. Audrey.
Gosh, Audrey, I'm sorry.
I think you can just say I'm sorry on that one.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Clark, don't be such a namby-pamby regarding shared appreciation of home ownership. You gave some pros and cons, but there are no pros. People should not buy something they cannot afford. It's as simple as that. You are a very influential person, and you should not be leading ignorant people into a lifestyle that they cannot afford. Tom,
I'd say that's too harsh. Shared appreciation mortgage, I'm not a big fan of them. What they allow someone to do is live in a property that they could not afford to buy otherwise. They get half a loaf. They get half the equity in that home down the road because the investor is getting the other half. But it allows them to own a home, at least half of the ownership of the home that they wouldn't have been able to have. So I don't look at it as necessarily living beyond their means. They're in a situation where the investor is getting out of it what the investor wants, and they're getting out of it what they want, a place that they can call their own, that they own half of. Is it ideal? No.
Clark advised a woman caring for her aunt with dementia on how to fight a $30 per month nursing home fee. I'm a physician who treats dementia patients. Dementia patients are completely reliant on their caretakers. In a perfect world, every dementia patient would have a full-time caretaker 24/7. But that's only an option for the super wealthy. Dementia patients can never get as much care as they need. There will never be enough resources, and our system only allows set fees. You're not allowed to pay a nursing home more for better care, meaning cutting corners and nickel and diming is the only way for a home to stay open. Pick a good home and stick with it, for better or for worse. Once you pick a facility, switching is almost impossible. Another home is unlikely to accept the transfer because the cost of care increases as the dementia progresses, and they assume that you're not happy in one home, you won't be happy in another either. The best ways to ensure good care is to visit as often as possible and write frequent thank you letters and give frequent small gifts to show appreciation. I'd recommend large gifts and outright tipping, but it's not allowed. We save our whole lives so that we can be well cared for when infirm. And if $30 per month can go just a little way to make that happen, even if it's not fair, she should gladly pay it and add another $30 a month for gifts for each person caring for her aunt. Dr. Rose.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. I want to say something else about care for a parent with dementia. My mom had dementia and had it for a long time till she died 9 years ago. And I was stunned how many people there never had visits from family. How are you going to show the staff that they should be caring towards your loved one if nobody from the family even cares enough to ever go see them? And seeing a parent who's in care should not be looked at as an obligation. But just think back to everything your parent did for you growing up. And, kids never appreciate what their parents do for them. But now the chips are down for a parent who has dementia of some kind, Alzheimer's, whatever. Be there for them. And Dr. Rose, I appreciate your perspective that these facilities are in a financial straitjacket and the actual caregivers are not well paid. And so your advice to give them gifts, it can be tokens if you can afford it, meaningful money, is a very worthy suggestion. And the other thing is words matter as well. When you go to visit, take the time to thank the people who take care of your loved one who's in a facility, whether it's skilled nursing, memory care unit, assisted living. Take the time to thank the people that are there doing the hard work day after day. And on that note, We're going to move on from Clark Stinks. And if you do have a Clark Stinks you'd like to post, please go to clark.com/Clark Stinks to post it. Coming up next, I want to talk about the porch pirate problem that just goes on. And there's a solution that people tried about 10 years ago, but the technology just wasn't there yet. I want to share it with you straight ahead. The porch pirate thing goes on, my friend. And it's so easy. You just follow the Amazon truck, the UPS truck, the FedEx truck, the Postal Service truck, and you just see them drop something off and you grab it and you're gone. That's why it has been such a terrible problem. I've talked about all my harebrained ideas, like for Amazon diverting to an Amazon locker facility, or sending it to your workplace. Boy, did I get some Clark Stinks about that. Workplaces that did not like receiving packages. And all the problems involved with the theft of packages. A lot of people have cameras now, so you catch a video of the crook, but the package is still gone. But there was something that some early pioneering types thought of back mid-last decade, and it just didn't catch on in the market. But it's back bigger time, and with technology being so much more advanced than it was 10 years ago, it's a potential solution. And these are package receiving boxes that you install at your house. And so the delivery driver, they're set up where the delivery driver from whichever of the package delivery organizations, they can open the box to put in your package. It locks, and these are very difficult to break in boxes. They're not crazy expensive if you get a ton of boxes, a ton of deliveries, and you're in an area where the porch pirates have hit repeatedly. It's an easy way for you to protect the time that's involved and the hassle of dealing with whatever company sent the package that went haywire. You know, the other thing I talked about is smaller companies that ship are now charging you a fee if you want them to cover the cost of the stolen package, because it's become such a big financial burden on the business that sold you the item in the first place. That's how big a problem this is. And so having a secure way to receive packages is the best and most important thing for you to do. My middle child, my daughter, who lives in Southern California, used to live in an apartment complex that had a room that packages were just dumped in. I can't tell you how many times she had packages stolen from that room before she realized, oops, this isn't working, and wasn't able to have things delivered to her anymore because they were just vanishing, and she had to go pick them up at secure places. Like there were, I'm trying to remember with UPS, she was able to pick them up at, I forget where she got them, maybe at a UPS store. Trying to remember what she did. And Amazon, she got her Amazon packages as long as she lived at that apartment from Amazon lockers because of all the packages that were being stolen. And you've never had a package stolen from your house?
Knock on Formica, not yet. I do have 2 very loud dogs and a doorbell camera. So I know when packages are left immediately. It tells me package left at front door. So it would be really hard for someone to get away with it.
I just know never to make you mad enough that you would wish me harm, because you could just sick those 2 dogs on me and it would be over.
They're sweeties. Okay.
They're sweeties to you, but what are they like to others?
They're good. They don't like people walking in front of the house, though. I'll just say that. Okay, Sal in Florida says, I've been riding my road bike 5 to 6 times a week, and the expenses are starting to add up. My original bike from Costco ended up costing me a lot in repairs, and my mechanic mentioned that it's not the best option for someone who rides as much as I do. My second bike isn't as bad, but the costs still accumulate. I'm looking for a reliable, mid-range road bike that offers the best value, something akin to buying a Toyota in the car world, dependable, durable, and cost-effective. Do you have any recommendations for brands or models that fit this description?
All right, this is a great question, and my automatic would be, well, you should go to Consumer Reports. This is not an area they have.
They've only done folding bikes. Yeah.
That they test, but you found
Cycling Weekly is a magazine, and they do have affiliate links. But they rank all road bikes, but then they have a specific list for budget road bikes, and maybe these are not high enough range for you. But it seems like what I would do is I would look at this list and then their list overall of road bikes, and then I would go look at reviews for each of the bikes because, I mean, they're all sold on Amazon. And you're going to find a ton of reviews on there, even if you don't buy it there.
But this thing is titled, this will be in our show links.
Yeah.
Best Budget Road Bikes of 2025. And a cycling magazine, what they consider to be budget is different than I would consider to be budget. So it's probably more what you're thinking of in a mid-price. People who don't cycle as a big activity of theirs, you're probably not aware that people spend $6,000 on road bikes. I mean, that's the kind of money that they'll spend. But there are a lot that you can spend a whole lot less. And
then I have a friend she's training for a triathlon, and she just got a really, really good bike, like fancy used. So people who are really into this, they might sell their bike on Facebook Marketplace or something, like because they're getting an even fancier bike. So that's a way also to get a better bike for less money.
So, okay, I'm going to tell a story on a friend.
Okay.
No details about who they are.
It's not me.
This friend decided he was going to start riding with a group of his buddies that ride all the time. So he spent $5,000 on a bike.
Wow.
He went on one ride.
No.
Then the bike sat for a while. Then he sold it. How much did he get for that bike after riding it one long ride?
Or on a more positive note, how much did the lucky buyer pay for it?
$500 for the $5,000 bike. So you know of what you speak.
Yikes.
That there are people who think they're going to do something, get too enthusiastic about it, spend too much money, then they got to sell it off. And it's kind of like jewelry, apparently, with a used bike. It's worth a tiny fraction of what was paid for it originally.
I can attest to that with all the yarn I have in my house that I was going to knit with. Not as much money as the bike, though. Okay.
You used to knit
I knit
all
sometimes,
the time.
not all the time. I knit once in a while.
Okay, wait a minute. What was it you used to do? Christa used to be a really nervous flyer.
Mm-hmm. I would knit on the plane.
We would travel. We did syndicated radio for a long time, and we'd travel all over the country on our spring and fall tours. And you'd sit there, and your way of calming yourself on the plane.
Yeah.
Wasn't that knitting?
That was knitting, but then they stopped letting me bring my knitting needles on the plane.
Oh, I didn't know those. I didn't think about those being banned.
All right. Let's go to another question. This is from Darrell in New Jersey. I know savings bonds are a common gift for a newborn baby, and while we certainly appreciate the generosity of friends and family, we wonder what the bonds are intended for, education or something else. We recently came across a bunch of bonds given to us years ago for our now teenage daughters and noticed that people were much more generous for our firstborn, which I guess is understandable since people tend to make more of a fuss over the first baby in a family.
Always happens, every family.
Yep. But it doesn't seem fair to the second. Should we somehow try to make it even, either with our own funds or by dividing the bond proceeds, or just distribute them per the names on the bonds and say, sorry, kiddo, that's life?
This will be your judgment. I mean, you could do any of a number of things, Darrell, for the second born. It doesn't have to be savings bonds. You could do anything to equalize it. If you did want to make sure it was equal, you could buy right now Series I savings bonds are a better deal. The ones originally purchased may have been Series EEs. You'd be better off with Series Is for the child who was kind of left out. And depending on how the bonds are titled, if the intention is for your kids to go to college, there's a program you may qualify for where all the interest earned over the years used for college would then be tax-free instead of taxable. Rules are pretty arcane, but you should be able to find them online pretty easily to find out if these bonds would best be used for college if that's a likely destination for either or both of the kids.
Jill in Wisconsin says, my 3-year-old daughter has cognitive and physical disabilities due to a rare genetic disorder. She may need assistance for the rest of her life. When she was born, we immediately signed her up for a Medicaid and, thanks to your wonderful advice, started an ABLE account, which we have funded to the max every year.
Good for you.
Recently...
Should I explain what an ABLE is?
Sure.
Okay. Before you go on with their question, an ABLE account is a special provision of tax law that's like kind of like a supplement to the 529 plans that parents use to save tax-free for college. The 529 ABLE, or 529A, the ABLE account, allows a parent of a disabled child to put aside money over the years that does not erode that child's ability to receive government assistance for care.
Okay. And so Jill goes on and says, recently, when we met with an estate planning attorney experienced in setting up special needs trusts, she cautioned us against putting any more money into the ABLE account because of a little-known Medicaid payback clause. This means if my daughter were to die with money left in the ABLE account, those funds would go to pay back Medicaid. The estate lawyer then suggested that for future monetary gifts, we might be better served investing them in a bank via a special needs trust, which would not have the tax benefits and would likely be much more expensive. So what do we do? There's no reason to believe my daughter will die prematurely, so my thought is to continue to fund the ABLE up to $100,000, and then, when she's older and needs assistance, spend that money first. Any advice you have on this is greatly appreciated and will likely help many families with children with disabilities.
Thank you very much for your post, because, Jill, we probably only have 2 questions a year about that apply to ABLE accounts. I'm with you versus the advice you receive professionally. I'm not an estate lawyer, but I'm with you because the financial needs of a child with disabilities in adulthood can be so significantly costly that you getting up to that $100,000 you're allowed to put in an ABLE before you disqualify your child from any government assistance, or you put that government assistance in jeopardy, is an absolute first step. I mean, the worst that happens is the worst, that you lose your child at a younger age than you expected. And the best circumstance, the ABLE grows so nicely tax-free over the years, and the ABLE accounts, the good ABLE accounts, are so inexpensive to administer that it's very efficient money. And I wouldn't worry about, you got more to worry about if your child dies younger than you expect than the fact that Medicaid is going to do a recapture of the money. So I'm with you. I think the smart first move is that you want to fund that ABLE, and then if you are in a financial position to be able to put more money aside in one of these expensive to draw up and expensive to administer trusts so that more money is there, great, go for it. But I think the ABLE account has filled a need that is so necessary for families with children with disabilities. I think it's great it exists. I think it's great they're affordable, and wonderful that you've been able to put funding into it. I would not stop doing that. Just make sure you never end up with money in there beyond the $100,000. And thank you so much for taking time to join us today. Know that we're here for you all week long in so many different ways. Social media, our websites, and if you live in a city that you see me on TV or hear me on radio, we've got that for you. We've got our newsletters. We have our free one-on-one advice available to you from the Team Clark Consumer Action Center. Everything we're about is about you being empowered with knowledge so that you can save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off. See you Monday.